About an hour ago, maybe a little longer, those of us here in the sanctuary, at the family service, and upstairs marking this festival with the youngest members of our community and their parents, stepped through the gates of this synagogue. I hope that process went smoothly for you, that you felt welcomed and put at ease, and that the individuals stationed outside, volunteers and paid security staff, helped you to feel that your safety and well-being are being cared for while inside, and as we enter and exit from this building. For those online, wherever you are, in this country or abroad, some even as far away as New Zealand, I trust that your entry through the portals of Zoom, YouTube, or Facebook was not interrupted by fractious Wi-Fi or trying technology. Online or in person, we cross a threshold of time and space as we leave behind our daily lives and gather as a community here in the synagogue. For these 2 hours, we are one congregation, a sacred collective. Whether we are leaders tasked with the governance of this synagogue, or volunteers helping with the multitude of activities that take place on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis, and that bring people together, whether we are members or friends, or guests visiting for the first time. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd like especially to include our guests who've joined with Deaf Shul, participants from the Jewish Deaf Association, who have joined us this morning together with the team who are beautifully signing this service. We are bound together at this moment as a Kehila Kedusha, a holy community in prayer. As a rabbi, the festivals of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur weigh heavily. We are mindful that it is at this time of the year that our congregants and others not perhaps affiliated yet to a synagogue want to be with other Jews, consciously or unconsciously, heeding the words of Hillel, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, do not separate yourself from the community. In just 4 Hebrew words, Hillel, who lived in the 1st century BCE, underlines the importance and efficacy of being part of a tzibur, a community. But what does he mean exactly? Is he referring to his own congregation in Palestine, where he studied and lived? Is he referring to the wider community of Palestine and Babylonia and throughout the Greco-Roman world? Or was it perhaps all of these? Is Hillel addressing Jewish identity? Or is he more simply referring to a particular congregation at prayer? The 15th century Italian commentator, best known for his commentary to the Mishnah, explains Hillel's words with a quotation from the Talmud. Do not separate yourself from the congregation, but rather, he explains, share their troubles, as anyone who separates from the congregation will not see the congregation consoled. Conversely, the Talmud teaches that just as Moses immersed himself in the suffering of the Israelites at a time of war and conflict, so the individual who immerses themselves in the distress of the community will merit to see the consolation of the community. Those words, share in their troubles, ring with a poignancy and relevance for us today, as we reflect not only on the last 2 years, since October the 7th, 2023, but also on the effect of COVID-19 on our community and our re-evaluation during that period of what it meant to connect and engage with each other. At home, in small bubbles or alone, the LJS recruited its regular volunteers and many more to phone every single affiliated member and friend of the LJS, to keep in touch with them during the lockdowns, to ensure that our members did not feel abandoned by the community. For some, family were close at hand to help with shopping and other chores. But for others, these relationships were vital. There was someone to listen, someone to relate to, someone to reduce that sense of loneliness and isolation. And for the volunteer, I hope, there was a sense of having a purpose and of building a bridge between the individual and the community of the LJS. I think we emerged from the lockdown stronger in some ways, with a greater understanding of the need for human engagement and connection, but also more vulnerable, more suspicious of the outside world and hostile forces. In what has been described by one writer as one of the most theologically intoxicating essays of the 20th century, The Lonely Man of Faith, the Orthodox scholar and theologian Joseph B. Soloveitchik reads the contradictory and different accounts of the creation of humankind in the opening 2 chapters of Genesis as 2 narratives that deal with 2 Adams, 2 men, 2 fathers of mankind, 2 types, 2 representatives of humanity. Adam the first, as Soloveitchik calls him, is created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. In Genesis 1, Adam the first is created last, on the 6th day of creation, after all creation has come into existence. Nothing is said about how Adam the first's body is formed. Male and female appear at the same moment. There is a community of living things, and humanity's task is to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and hold sway, not dominion over creation, but over the unpredictability and danger of the natural world. In Genesis 2, Adam the second is created first, before all other living creatures. His body is formed from the dust of the ground, and God breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. Adam the second is charged with the duty of cultivating the garden and tending to it. In the story of Adam the first, both male and female are created simultaneously, while Adam the second emerges alone, with Eve appearing subsequently as his helpmate and complement. Soloveitchik sees Adam the first as naturally gregarious, drawn towards community, challenged by a hostile environment, and consequently impelled to take joint action with others. The creative, ambitious impulses of Adam the first instinctively induces him to unite with others. It enhances his chances for successful survival. With Eve created at the same time as himself, the 2 act in unison in order to act successfully. Adam the second's predicament is that he is created alone. God considers the plight of the man standing alone in the Garden of Eden and considers, Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado, it is not good that the man be alone. In this second version of the creation myth, a human partnership is created, a way of countering loneliness and isolation and the absence of community. God's perception of the man in this second chapter of Genesis is not of his solitude. It is of a kind of existential aloneness in the world. God has set the man in the garden to tend it and sustain it. The man can eat all he likes from every tree in the garden, except the tree of knowledge of good and evil, from which he may not eat. For the moment he eats of it, he is doomed to die. It is at that moment that God considers the circumstance of Adam alone, without a helpmate, without a community. With the mention of death, fear and trembling enter the world, compounding and making conscious humanity's isolation and loneliness. By the light of the day, preoccupied with tending the garden, finding fruit to eat from the other trees, the man can be absorbed by his manual labor. But when the sun sets and darkness descends, as the Midrash imagines, the man weeps and is afraid. It is the first time he thinks about his own mortality, and he dreads being alone. October the 7th heightened our vulnerability as Jews. The loss of life, the abductions, the violence and trauma uprooted any sense of security or indeed complacency that we live in a safe world. The war that erupted afterwards and is still raging has affected us all so deeply. It is not only our buildings that have become fortresses, but we ourselves have become defensive, scared of wearing our identity around our necks or on the doorposts of our house. Misinformation, prejudice, hatred, a binary vision of either you're with us or you're not, convey an image of two warring forces facing each other, so deeply embedded in conflict and violence that we are filled with a terrible sense of dread about the future. We ask ourselves, what does it mean to be Jewish in today's world? What is the nature of our relationship with the state of Israel? How can we speak about cherished values of justice and mercy, truth and peace, when we, as the Jewish people, as part of the body of the Jewish people, struggle to embody them? Like the prophets of Baal, facing Elijah on Mount Carmel, we hop from one foot to another, gashing ourselves and waiting for a sound, for a response, but there is none. Instead, we hear what the poet Matthew Arnold described in his poem Dover Beach as he contemplated the skepticism and receding relevance of faith in his own age. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. The loss of being together as a physical community during COVID, the profound losses of life in those early months and afterwards, shared mourning and grief, an awareness of our human vulnerability, of our resilience and loneliness, of growing old, of young people's health hanging by a thread as they did their schooling or university years online, confined to one room in halls of residence, in many ways bound us together as a community There was something sacred, holy in the relationships we built with each other. We tried to embody those values of love, care, compassion, and connection without sounding complacent, and perhaps it made us into better individuals. We grieved for the life we had, but we tried to create something new out of this loss. We tried to ensure that no one would be forgotten or lost in a different world. In the year following October the 7th, as our own community wrestled to form a response through the honor of adopting 2 of the hostages, father of 3, Doro, and Amit Buskila, the 27-year-old daughter of a single mother, both murdered, as we attempted to articulate what we felt and longed for as a congregation through our prayers and liturgy, as some of us joined marches and demonstrations for the hostages against anti-Semitism, against the war, against racism, pro- and anti-Israel or Palestine, the fragile unity of our community started to crack. The rabbis were criticized for being too pro-Israel or too pro-Palestinian. It became a challenge to get the balance right. Voices began to emerge, asserting they had felt they had been silenced. Anger and resentment created a fissure that was hard to ignore. Conversation within families, among friends, work colleagues, within the community became more difficult to navigate, whether about the Jewish state, Palestine, anti-Semitism, campus politics, identity, or whether we are victors or victims, oppressors or oppressed. And the more polarized the so-called conversation, the more entrenched, the more frightened, the more isolated we have become. In his searingly honest book, Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, Peter Beinart quotes Abraham Joshua Heschel. To act in the spirit of religion is to unite what lies apart, to remember that humanity as a whole is God's beloved child. To act in the spirit of race, and Beinart adds, or tribal supremacy of any kind, is to sunder, to slash, to dismember the flesh of living humanity. It is too painful to draw on the details of the message of Beinart's book, which calls on us to turn away from the lachrymose Jewish narrative of victimhood and the veneration of states. It is a far better thing to find ways in which we can embody this vision of Heschel's. As we gather as one community today and in the days to come, to celebrate a new year, to reflect on this past year and contemplate the coming year, perhaps we can carry some of the spirit of what Heschel speaks of into the world with us. To act in the spirit of religion is to be part of a community, our own community here at the LJS, the wider community of the people Israel throughout the world, and of humanity, the children of one God. We do not have to agree with each other. After all, our lived experience makes us see the world through varied and different prisms. But we can listen and learn about each other. We can acknowledge our own moral fallibility. We are not exceptional as a people. As the Torah says, it was not because you were more numerous than any other people that God loved you and chose you, nor is it because of your righteousness that the Eternal One, your God, is giving you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. In a few moments, we will hear the sound of the shofar with its primal awakening call, urging each one of us to change our ways, our habits, the relationships we have established, the choices we have made over the years. Its sound brings a moment of heightened tension and emotion into this Rosh Hashanah service, a wordless cry for a prophetic voice that calls for justice in our world, a symbol of our vulnerability as we recall the ram that was sacrificed in place of Isaac, the brokenness of our spirits as we turn to God with contrite hearts, an expression of our humility and our hope for something better and long-lasting in the future. Al tifrosh min hatzibor. Do not separate yourself from the community as we begin this new year. For in being part of the community, in times of distress, we will merit seeing the consolation, the repair and renewal of the community. Bimheira v'yamenu. May that time come for ourselves, for this community of the LJS, and for all those throughout the world whose longing is for peace, soon and in our days. And let us say, Amen. Amen.